die or ever be a sacrifice, I want to make sure that my life made at least 5 million kids happy. All right, let's say worst thing comes to worst, I die a tragic death or some shit.
What if I told you XXXTentacion predicted his own death hours before it happened? This is not a rumor. This is not a conspiracy. This is the real, haunting message he left behind, a message so raw and powerful, it shook the entire world. And after you hear it, you will never look at his death the same way again. XXXTentacion's final recorded message before his tragic death has surfaced, and it is nothing short of haunting. In this chilling clip, he talks openly about the possibility of dying young, almost as if he sensed it coming. But that is only part of the story. What really shook people were the unexpected things he said, changing how many now look at his passing. Let us break it down, the message that shook the world of hip-hop. At just 20 years old, XXXTentacion was shot and killed in Deerfield Beach, Florida, during what police called a robbery. But things took a strange turn when fans discovered a live video he posted on Instagram just hours before his death, one that felt more like a warning or even a prediction. Before we dive into that, it is important to understand why X was not just another rapper chasing fame. X was in a league of his own. He broke every rule when it came to music styles. As a pioneer of SoundCloud rap and emo hip-hop, he blended genres like trap, rock, and even Japanese melodies. His sound was unlike anything people had heard before. He once said how he could shift from rock to rap or even to Japanese instrumentals because music fascinated him that deeply. That bold creativity, along with his raw, honest lyrics, made him stand out in a crowded scene. But X was not only about flashy rhymes or street life anthems. Even though he could do that too, he spoke openly about pain, mental health struggles, and depression, the tough topics young people, especially in poor communities, often faced but hardly discussed. His music connected with fans on a deep, emotional level. Now, let us get back to that eerie final message. On June 18, 2018, just hours before his death, XXXTentacion went live on Instagram. In a short video, less than a minute long, he shared thoughts that now seem deeply prophetic. He told his fans that if the worst happened, if he died a tragic death before seeing his dreams come true, he hoped at least his message would reach the youth. He wished his words and music could help at least 5 million kids be happy, or find hope, no matter how people judged him. It was not just his words but the way he spoke them. It felt like he knew his time was short. He even said if he ever had to die or be a sacrifice, he wanted his life to mean something, to bring joy or healing to millions. He reminded his fans never to let depression control them and told them their soul should guide their body, with their mind having no limits. In his last message, XXXTentacion spoke about legacy, about making a difference even in the face of death. And now, after his passing, those words carry a powerful weight. This was not just another motivational talk. This felt like a young man pouring his heart out, like he knew his time was slipping away. What really struck people was the timing. That Instagram video dropped roughly 2 hours before he was killed. 2 hours that is way too close to be brushed off as a random coincidence. And to make it even more chilling, this was not some old clip making rounds again. This was a fresh message posted the same day he lost his life. The more you listen to what X said in that clip, the harder it hits. He spoke about chasing dreams boldly and encouraged his fans to go after what they believed in. He showed them love and faith, as if he was passing down his last words of wisdom. Now, some might shrug and say, rappers always talk about death and legacy. And sure, hip-hop has a long history with themes of life, death, and legacy, of legends like Biggie and Pac, who both talked about their own deaths before they happened. But X's situation stood apart from all that. This was not a random lyric in a song or a passing comment in an interview. This was a heartfelt, focused message straight to his fans, dropped just hours before his murder. The exact words, the timing, the raw emotion, it all added up to something that felt different. It shook people in a way few things do. And let us be real about where X came from. He did not grow up in some quiet, safe neighborhood. His life was filled with struggle, family issues, and run-ins with the law. Raised mostly by his grandmother, Colette Jones, in Lauderhill, Florida. Because of his mother's financial struggles, X knew what it meant to live with hardship. His world was far from privileged. He grew up in tough surroundings and fully understood how risky his lifestyle was. On top of that, he had serious legal battles hanging over him. At the time of his death, X was facing around 15 felony charges including serious accusations, like aggravated battery on a pregnant woman and witness tampering. He was only recently allowed off house arrest to go on tour. So, when a young man like him shares a message about his legacy and dreams just hours before his death, it does not seem like a simple coincidence. It felt like he understood the danger surrounding him and wanted to make sure his voice lived on. But here is where it gets even deeper, the way that final video shook the world. After his murder, that Instagram clip did not just fade away. It exploded online. Millions of fans shared it, turning it into a powerful reminder of what was lost. Media outlets and fans alike pointed out how emotional and honest that message was. It gave people a real look into X's thoughts and hopes for the future. That short video became more than just a social media post, it became a legacy piece. A young man's last message to a world that desperately needed his voice. It completely changed how people saw X's death. It reshaped how they viewed his mindset in those final hours and how they understood his impact on music and culture. This was not just a robbery gone wrong. This felt like the silencing of a voice trying to heal a hurting generation and challenge a broken system. And to be honest, X was already a massive cultural figure before his death. His music touched millions, especially millennials and Gen Z. Nearly 75% of these young people knew who he was, and 65% held a positive view of him. But that final recording pushed his legacy even further, making him a symbol for so many. Up next, we are diving into what really happened on that tragic day. How X's haunting words seemed to predict the future, and how his killers thought they could walk away after taking out one of hip-hop's brightest stars. What happened on the streets afterward is a story of its own, showing just how deep X's impact truly ran. This is the story of how everything shifted, from a young man's warning to a heartbreaking reality. And now, let us walk through the events of June 18, 2018. Picture this: XXXTentacion walks into a bank and withdraws $50,000 in cash, stuffing it into a Louis Vuitton bag. And yeah, you might be wondering why he would carry around that kind of money in cash. If you know anything about how young rappers from tough neighborhoods move, you would understand why carrying large amounts of cash feels normal to them. For many, having money on hand is just part of the lifestyle. After visiting the bank that day, XXXTentacion stopped by Riva Motorsports, a high-end dealership in Deerfield Beach, Florida. He was looking at motorcycles, maybe thinking of grabbing something new for the summer. It was supposed to be a regular day. Grab some cash, check out some bikes, and maybe hit the studio later. Just a typical day in the life of a young star, living his dream, but unknown to him. Four men sitting in a dark-colored Dodge Journey SUV had been watching him inside the dealership, and they were planning something that would change the course of hip-hop forever. Here is where the story takes a dark turn. This was not a random street robbery. The four men, Mendrick Williams, Michael Boatwright, Trayvon Newsom, and Robert Allen, had been cruising around looking for someone to rob. They had no specific target. They were simply hunting for a victim. But when they spotted XXXTentacion, someone famous and recognizable, they decided to make him their target, mainly because of how he looked and the car he was driving. What happened next shows how reckless some people can be when they think they are untouchable. In the streets, many do not see rappers as real threats. They see them as easy targets, guys with cash, light security, and flashy lifestyles. And sadly, that kind of thinking has led to many artists getting hurt or killed. As XXXTentacion was about to leave Riva Motorsports, the men made their move. According to court records and surveillance footage, his black BMW was blocked in by the Dodge Journey. What followed was caught on camera, scene that is hard to watch even now. Two masked gunmen, Michael Boatwright and Trayvon Newsom, approached his car. Native young talent Saul. For $50,000, XXXTentacion was rushed to Broward Health North Hospital, but the injuries were too severe. The voice that, just hours earlier, had inspired millions to chase their dreams and not let depression control them, was gone forever. What makes this even more heartbreaking is how senseless it all was. These men were not on some personal mission against X. This was not a revenge plot or an industry beef. It was just a group of men looking for a quick score, who happened to target a famous rapper that day. Now think about this: why would someone rob a high-profile artist, be prepared to kill them, and actually believe they could get away with it? In that world, a target is a target. And many see rappers as easy money, because they assume artists are not real gangsters. But what these men failed to realize was how much heat would come down on them for taking out someone like X. This was no routine case for the local police. federal agents, intense media coverage, and massive public pressure made sure this case got full attention. The investigation was thorough. Surveillance footage, cell phone records, and witness statements all connected the suspects. They thought they had pulled off the perfect crime, but they left behind a mountain of evidence. Robert Allen, who played the role of Lookout, eventually broke under pressure and confessed everything. In August 2022, Allen pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and armed robbery in exchange for testifying against the others. His testimony painted a clear picture from the planning to the crime itself to what happened afterward. According to him, once they killed XXXTentacion and stole the cash, they split it up. Boatwright, Newsom, and Williams each got $15,000, while Allen walked away with $515,000 each. That is what those killers thought XXXTentacion's life was worth. As Tony Yayo once said, they threw their entire lives away for just $15,000 apiece. Think about that for a second. That amount of money is not even enough to buy a decent used car, yet they were ready to commit murder over it. Now, this is where X's final Instagram video hits even harder. Just hours before his death, he spoke from the heart about leaving a legacy, inspiring kids, and fighting against depression. It felt like he sensed his time was running out and wanted his message to live on even if he did not. People often call that recording haunting or prophetic. Because X spoke about dying young and, heartbreakingly, his words came true. But what made that video so powerful was not just his eerie prediction, it was the hope, love, and belief in his fans that poured out of him. That short message peeled back all the headlines and legal drama, showing the world who XXXTentacion truly was, a flawed young man with a genuine desire to make a positive difference. Knowing those were basically his final words, that hits on a whole different level. Up next, let us look at what happened after X's death, how the killers got caught, what happened to them, and why that final recording still echoes with millions today. Justice did command both the streets, and the courts made sure of it. What happened to XXXTentacion's killers is a clear warning to anyone thinking they can hurt a major artist and get away with it. They learned the hard way that when you cross someone with global fans, the backlash is way bigger than some neighborhood beef. After X was murdered on June 18, 2018, law enforcement moved fast. They threw every resource at solving the case because, when a famous artist is killed in broad daylight, it is not treated like a routine street crime. And honestly, these guys made it easy. They left a trail of evidence everywhere. On June 20, 2018, just 2 days after the murder, Dedrick Williams was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, armed robbery, and even driving without a valid license. That is how fast the law came down on them. The other suspects, Robert Allen, Michael Boatwright, and Trayvon Newsom, were rounded up in the following months. A grand jury indicted all four on charges of premeditated murder, making it clear this was a planned hit, not some random act. But here is where things got interesting. Robert Allen, who had played Lookout, realized the heat was way too much for him. In August 2022, he pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and robbery with a firearm as part of a deal. He agreed to testify against the others. Some people might call that snitching, but let us be facing life in prison for helping kill someone over $15,000 would make anyone think twice. Allen's testimony became the backbone of the prosecution's case. He broke down exactly how everything went from the planning, to the killing, to how they split the stolen money afterward. When the trial started on February 7, 2023, at Florida's 17th Judicial Circuit, the prosecutors came fully loaded. They presented surveillance footage, DNA evidence, cell phone records, and Allen's detailed testimony. One chilling moment in court was when the prosecutor highlighted that the killers had sat in their vehicle for 8 minutes and 35 seconds before making their move to drive that point home. The prosecutor made the jury sit in complete silence for the exact amount of time, 8 minutes and 35 seconds. Imagine sitting there, thinking about how these men had all that time to walk away, to change their minds, but instead chose murder for a quick payday. The evidence was airtight. They had footage from Riva Motorsports showing the robbery and shooting. Cell phone records placed the suspects right at the scene. And DNA experts confirmed that the masks left behind carried the defendant's DNA. The defense tried every trick in the book. They even dragged Drake's name into it, suggesting a feud between Drake and X had something to do with the murder. But the judge shut that down fast. There was zero evidence to back up those wild claims. At the end of the day, justice caught up with them. And no amount of finger-pointing or conspiracy theories could save them from the choices they made. Even industry insider WAC 100 called out how ridiculous that defense sounded, with surveillance videos, DNA proof, and eyewitnesses stacked against them. Trying to drag Drake's name into it only made the killers look desperate. The verdict came in on March 20, 2023. And it was clear and firm. Williams and Newsom were found guilty of first-degree murder and armed robbery. The jury saw straight through their weak defenses and conspiracy claims. When sentencing day arrived on April 6, 2023, the judge did not hold back. Michael Boatwright, 28, got 2 life sentences with no chance of parole, plus 30 extra years for violating probation. Dedrick Williams, 26, and Trayvon Newsom, 24, also got life without parole. When you break it down, Tony Yayo summed it up best. If these guys live to be 65, they will have spent 40 years in prison, for what? A cut of $15,000 each. That works out to about $375 a year. That is less than what most people pay for their monthly phone bill. Robert Allen, who took a plea deal, got a lighter sentence, 7 years in prison, with credit for 5 years already served, followed by 20 years of probation. He even got released early in October 2023. But prison life comes with its own dangers. These men are not just serving time. They are living with the fear that some of XXXTentacion's loyal fans who might also be behind bars, could be in there with them. Imagine doing life in a cell block with people who grew up listening to X, knowing you helped take his life. That is a risk they will carry every single day. Now, back to X's final message and why it still matters. After his death, that Instagram video became way more than just another post. It turned into his goodbye, a heartfelt message to the world, and a chilling look into his state of mind. Before everything happened, people started seeing XXXTentacion in a new light. The video showed a young man who, despite all his troubles, wanted to help others and spread hope. One of his closest friends said it best: X was just beginning to scratch the surface of his talent. That video gave us a glimpse of the man. He was becoming someone who wanted to use his platform to make a real difference. His final message still hits hard today. X's last Instagram post became the 11th most liked post on the platform, with over 32.5 million likes by February 2024. Millions still watch that video, draw strength from his words, and feel connected to his story. And let us be real, X's influence on music never faded. His unique style and emotional honesty shaped a whole wave of artists, from Billie Eilish and Juice WRLD to Kendrick Lamar, Lil Nas X, Trippie Redd, and even Kanye West. The emo rap sound he helped pioneer is everywhere now. Adam Tutu even compared X to Tupac, and when you think about it, the comparison fits. Both were young, controversial, raw, and deeply connected to their fans. Both spoke about pain and real-life struggles, and both were taken too soon. What makes X's last recording so powerful is that even with everything stacked against him, even sensing that his days might be numbered, he was thinking about his fans. He wanted to spread love, encourage hope, and make a positive impact. That is the heart of X's legacy. It is not the controversies or the court cases, it is a young man, fighting his own demons but still wanting to help others heal. That last video changed how we remember him. It reminded us that behind all the headlines was a young artist trying to make sense of life and leave something meaningful behind in his final hours. Knowing the risks around him, XXXTentacion chose to speak life, hope, and love instead of anger and hate. That is why seeing his killers locked away for life feels like justice. They did not just end a life, they tried to silence a voice meant to heal a generation, but they could not silence his words. X's final message still echoes, still moves people, and still changes lives. That is the real power of his last recording, not just a chilling prediction of his death, but a lasting reminder of how much one voice can mean when it chooses love over hate, hope over fear, and helping others over selfish gain.